whiter than snow, dwelt a maid beloved and cherished by high and low, but with autumn leaf she perished long time ago. Rock and tree and flowing water, long time ago, bird and bee and blossom taught her love's spell to know. While to my fond words she listened, murmuring low, tenderly her blue eyes glistened long time ago.
Thank you so much. Good morning. And welcome. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church. Wonderful to have the gang here. And I'm going to jump right into the subject at hand. So when you're off in your Sunday school classes, I'm going to give you just an idea of what we're going to be talking about here. So maybe you can continue the conversation. Here's a question for you, because I know you are all astute observers of society. And so I want you to tell me, do you think that everybody out there in society has pretty much the same amount of money and are treated fairly, or is there a split between those who have a lot of money and those who have little money? What do you think? There's a split. Okay. Yeah. Do you think that's fair? No. Okay. Yeah. Oh, don't tell me how much your mom is making. No. So I want you all to imagine a ladder, okay? And at the top of the ladder are a very few very, very, very rich people. They're so rich that they have a maid coming in every day to clean their house. They have a butler to attend to them when their needs need to be satisfied. They have a mansion, exactly right. And on weekends, if they want, they fly to Paris. And they have a private jet. You like that lifestyle, don't you? Yeah, you can get into that. So this is going to be a tough one for you, because you're liking this far too much. And then on the hang on. And then on the next rung of the ladder down, there are people not quite as rich, but they still have, let's just say, a lot of toys to play with, and they're pretty well off. And you go down the ladder, and people have less and less and less. And then at the very, very bottom, there are more people than all the others put together up that ladder. And these people they could be homeless, or they can live in homes but have the very, very poor, and they can't afford health care, and they can't afford to send their kids to schools, and yeah. It happens in countries where what? When the economy and government is not well put together. It happens in other countries. Well, you know, take a look at our country. Take a look at Salt Lake City. If you go downtown, you will find more homeless people than you can imagine. And so let me ask you this. Do you think it is fair? Do you think it is fair that we ask the people who are way, way, way up there at the top of the ladder to give a lot of money to help those people who are way, way, way on the bottom? Do you think that's fair? They shouldn't have all of it. Okay, they shouldn't give all of it, but they should give enough. Okay. Okay, do you think we should tell them what enough is, or just depend on them? Okay, okay. So I'm sorry, I missed some comments here. You think we should give some? We should ask or make the people at the top. And here's the question: should we ask them to give money to the poor, or make them give money to the poor? Make them ask. That's a tough question. Okay, that is what we're going to be talking about today. Do we make them, or do we know it's not fair, but do we make them, or do we ask them? Now, let me just ask one last thing. If we ask them, do you think they'll give a lot of money to the poor? Convince them. How do you convince them? Yeah, that's tough. Okay. Well, hopefully your parents will be buzzing like this themselves at the end of the service. Let's get rolling. Rosie, you are going to like the chalice. Well, maybe. How much money do you have?
Symbol of light, symbol of knowledge, symbol of warmth, symbol of freedom. We light this chalice for a symbol of our faith. And here we gather for hope, celebrate hope, and the infinite possibilities of love.
Thank you, Rosie. Our opening hymn, number 16, "'Tis a Gift to Be Simple," but we're going to make it just a tad complex because we're Unitarians. We don't do simple. We're going to ask that it first will be sung, and then the first verse, or there's only one verse, it'll be sung one time through, and then I'll ask everybody to rise. Jared?
'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where you ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn, turn will be our delight, till by turning, turning we come round right. Tis the gift to be simple, tis the gift to be free, tis the gift to come down where you ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place transformed, in the valley of love and delight, true simplicity is gained. To bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. To turn, turn will be our delight, till by turning, turning we come round right.
We need one more round. As I received word that the Keystone Pipeline XL would not be constructed, I thought there was a lot of truth in the words that we sometimes utter and, with some doubt ourselves. But there's a lot of truth that hope can never die. Hope may flicker, it may feel faint, but it never dies. It never dies because of our courage to do the hard things in the face of great odds. Let's take a moment to unite our minds and our hearts in a spirit of reflection, deep thought, prayer. O Spirit of life and love, this is a great day for the earth, and we are ever so grateful. This is a great day for grassroots organizers who never relented in the face of what seemed such obvious defeat. And we are ever so grateful to those environmental idealists who somehow managed to find common ground with farmers and ranchers and assured them that we're all on this great planet together, doing best for our soil, our water, our children. We have only begun to know the power that is in us if we would join our solitudes in the communion of struggle. Whatever we can do or dream that we can do, let us begin it. Boldness has genius, power, magic. May we be ever so bold in our loving. May we be ever so bold in our living. Amen.
Our reading this morning. The Pilgrims were socialists? Wow. How many knew that? Kate Zernicki is the writer, and she does a lot of op-eds for the New York Times and other journals. And she starts off by saying, Thanksgiving. A celebration regardless of creed, a time for all Americans to come together after a divisive election year. But why take a holiday from argument? In these fractious times, even the meaning of Thanksgiving has been subject to political debate. Forget what you learned about the first Thanksgiving being a celebration of a bountiful harvest or an expression of gratitude to the Indians who helped the Pilgrims through those harsh first months in an unfamiliar land. In the Tea Party view of the holiday, the first settlers were actually early socialists. They realized the error of their collective ways and embraced capitalism, producing a bumper year upon which they decided there was only right to celebrate the glory of the free market and private property. Historians quibble with this interpretation. But the story, related by libertarians and conservatives for years, has taken on new life over the last year among Tea Party audiences who revere early American history and hunger for any argument against what they believe is the big government takeover of the United States. It has made Thanksgiving another proxy in the debate over health care and entitlement spending, and placed it alongside the New Deal and the Constitution on the platter of historical items picked apart by competing narratives. Now, there are other debates about Thanksgiving, whether the first one was in Jamestown, Virginia, or Plymouth, Massachusetts, whether it was intended as a religious holiday or not. But broadly, the version passed on to generations of American schoolchildren holds that the settlers had arrived in the New World on the Mayflower in 1620 and were celebrating the next year's good harvest, sharing in the bounty with Squanto and their other Indian friends who had taught them how to hunt and farm on the new terrain. All very kumbaya, say Tea Party historians, but missing the economic lessons within. In one common telling, the Pilgrims who came to Plymouth established a communal system where all had to pool whatever they hunted or grew on their lands. Because they could not reap the fruits of their labors, no one had any incentive to work, and the system failed. Confusion, thievery, and famine ensued. Finally, the governor of the colony, William Bradford, abolished this system and gave each household a parcel of land. With private property to call their own, the Pilgrims were suddenly very industrious and found themselves with more corn than they knew what to do with. So they invited the Indians over to celebrate. In some other versions, the first Thanksgiving is not a feast but a brief respite from famine. But the moral is always the same: socialism doesn't work. The same commune to capitalism, famine to feast story is told of Jamestown, the first English settlement in 1607. Rush Limbaugh repeats the Thanksgiving story of Plymouth every year, reading it from a chapter in one of his books entitled Dead White Guys or What Your History Books Never Told You. Some details change. One year, he had the Pilgrims growing organic vegetables. Thus endeth the reading this morning.
Because it's not in your program, I'd like you to know that this is the piano prelude number 8 by Claude Debussy, The Girl with the Flaxen Hair.
Rick, thank you so very, very much. Always a delight to have you here. And our baritone, Jared Lesa. Thank you. This is your first time with us? I would have remembered if you were here before. I thought it was your first time. Thanks so very much. I can't wait to tell David Owens that we have a new baritone in our choir. Rick, didn't you tell him that comes with the deal? No. Thank you, gentlemen, both, very, very, very much. Because it's important to this congregation, not because we're snoopy, but we really do like to extend a warm welcome, especially to those who are here for the very first time. And to help us find out who really has darkened this church for the first time this morning, I'm going to ask you please to just stand up so we can see who you are and smother you with kindness during the coffee hour. Anybody here for the first time this morning? Please stand up. Welcome. Welcome. Great. And up in the balcony. Thank you very much for being here this morning. And we do have a wonderful welcoming table, and it'll be great to get to know you. Thanks for coming with us. We've got just a couple of announcements. Let me, two that I want to stress, and let me just begin by asking how many have never been to a church auction before? How many have never been? Don't worry, I won't excommunicate you. All right, just sort of, okay. I hope that this year's auction, which is on Saturday, this coming Saturday at Rice-Eccles Stadiums, will help break the ice for you, and you'll come and really truly understand what a remarkable, spirited, and fun experience it really is. The ticket price is $55. For that, you get all the wine you can drink. Be careful, but nobody's going to keep tabs. A wonderful dinner, wonderful entertainment and childcare if you have need of that. Entertainment this year is provided by, first of all, our auctioneer is Jim DeBacchus, who is a shining light in our Utah State Senate, and he will bring that shining light with him. He is I've had the occasion to speak with him on a number of times. He is a fun personality with a lot of energy, and it'll be great for all of us to get to know him better. He's there. And then every auction, the church presents a Fairly Free Thinker Award, and it's always quite a celebrity who receives that. And this year's recipient is none other but Robert Fulghum. So Robert Fulghum will be there, and of course he will have his commentary on what a fairly free thinker really means. We help the church enormously in helping us get through our fiscal year, mainly so we can provide the programs that are essential to this church and the programs that you ask for. It's a wonderful, fun way to help the church financially and also to participate in what is truly a fun night in a beautiful, beautiful venue at Rice-Eccles. If you don't go because you're afraid, oh, I don't really know anybody there, I'll make sure you're going to get to know plenty of people. It's a wonderful buzz. It's like a fun coffee hour with wine. But I'll make sure that everybody will have a good time. If the $55 is a sticking point, see me, please, privately, and we'll talk about, and I'll cut you a deal. We'll talk about it, okay? The other announcement, I forgot to say, this is the last Sunday before the auction. Okay? The auction is this coming Saturday. Following the service, we have an auction table. Please make your way there. Get your tickets. Getting those tickets is very, very easy. And take a look at all the things that will be auctioned off. It's really superb. The auction committee, once again, has just done a wonderful job. It's every other year that we do this, so grab an opportunity for this year. I'm a little embarrassed that the second announcement also calls upon your generosity, but it's important, especially in this time of year as we approach Thanksgiving, and we probably tell the Thanksgiving story the right way, not the Rush Limbaugh way. But we're very, very We're very, very alert to the fact of the disparities in society. We have a sister church, San Esteban, which is in West Valley City. That congregation is about 98% comprised of undocumented workers. We've had a wonderful relationship over the years, and at Thanksgiving time, we collect money so that their minister, Pablo Ramos, has a chance to give out gift certificates to the members of his church who really need a boost, especially around the Thanksgiving time. So there is a table set off on the the south side of Elliott Hall, and I'll be making this ask this week and for the next 2 Sundays before Thanksgiving. So if you can't manage this Sunday, I hope that the next few Sundays you'll be able to share generously, and we can help the congregation at San Esteban. And we're not done talking about money, because the offering will now gratefully be received, a chance to greet one another and bid each other a good morning. During the 1952 presidential election campaign, Dwight D. Eisenhower accused Adlai Stevenson of creeping socialism. Stevenson responded by saying, "I detest anything that creeps." Socialism has never been a complimentary term in America. As our reading this morning indicated, even the first settlement in Jamestown could not escape the attributes of socialism as reason for that colony's failure. Although the Tea Party holds socialism accountable for the unraveling of the colony, founded in 1607, Republican presidential frontrunner Ben Carson actually upped the ante recently by claiming that Jamestown was settled by communists. I never knew that, but when you listen to his calm voice, you figure, wow, that's interesting. The moral of the right-wing narrative is that collectivism leads to destruction. And so when you listen to this, it seems that capitalism has been in our nation's DNA since the very first Thanksgiving. There's an old adage which says that if you say a foul or nasty word often enough, it will lose its teeth. The word then becomes commonplace. It no longer, again, with enough repetition, it no longer shocks the senses when you hear it. Bernie Sanders, running for president, and Hillary Clinton's chief rival for the Democratic nomination, has articulated his identification with socialism in a never-ending echo that keeps repeating and repeating and repeating. Socialism is not creeping into Bernie's campaign. He owns it, rock solid, and will even claim from his tiny podium in a televised national debate, he'll identify with socialism. Anyone who wants to denigrate Bernie by calling him a socialist had better find another word. Win or lose, Bernie Sanders has cut the fangs from the terror of socialism to where it is now so commonplace it has emerged or is emerging as, well, it's being considered. Is it viable? At least people are talking about it in a gentle way. Socialism in America's system of government. Let's think about that. The appeal of socialism in our nation's downward spiral of income inequality has freed up many to use the word, including the billionaire tech magnate Bill Gates. He did not hesitate to throw his support towards socialism in his recent interview with the Atlantic magazine. Gates will spend $2 billion of his own wealth on green energy investments and call upon his private sector billionaires to help make the United States fossil-free by 2050. But in doing so, Gates admitted that the private sector is too selfish and inefficient, and that mitigating climate change would be impossible without the help of government research and development. Gates said, "There's no fortune to be made," hinting that private investments for a sustainable Earth would never materialize in our greedy society. He labeled the private sector as inept. Gates may have lost a few of his billionaire friends, who knows, but he was rather pointed in saying the United States doesn't have to reinvent the wheel to be a green energy juggernaut. It can simply look to currently existing examples in countries with socialist policies, like Germany, and he mentioned China. He noted that just this past July, Germany set a new record by generating 78% of its electricity from renewable sources. 78%. Greenhouse gas emissions in Germany are at their lowest point since 1990. Gates touted China for its $80 billion investment into green energy. That's more than the United States and Europe put together. Billionaire socialists are unfortunately a rare breed. Bernie could use some. Bernie Sanders also looks to other socialist countries as models for what society could be like. He identifies as a democratic socialist like much of Europe, which implies no state ownership of everything by any means. Instead, it's about creating a nation, if not trying to create a world in which all human beings have a decent standard of living. Bernie points specifically to Finland, Norway, and Denmark, where poverty has been virtually eliminated. All people there have health care as a right of citizenship. College education is available to all people regardless of income. There's a lot to learn from other countries, said Bernie, countries that have created more egalitarian societies than has the United States. When was the last time a politician raised the issue of an egalitarian society, let alone stand front and center in support of it? By just raising the specter of equality, Bernie has stirred the imagination of millions of Americans while sending terror through the 1% who have made amassing personal fortune their foremost preoccupation. Socialism, a more egalitarian society, has been introduced into the presidential race at a time when poverty has pushed our cities to the tipping point of collapse. At a time where student debt has virtually vanquished our college system as we know it. Healthcare, such prohibitive costs that preclude far too many Americans. 2 weeks ago, the Salt Lake Tribune featured a study which revealed that 1/2 of those who rent in Salt Lake City, can you imagine 1 out of every 2 people who rent in our city are, and I quote from the Tribune, one hiccup from homelessness or financial disaster. The analysts for the Tribune cited that 25.6% of Salt Lake tenants fork over between 30 and 50% of their earnings on rent. Another 23% spend more than half their earnings on rent. These people, obviously, cannot afford health care. They can't prepare for any emergencies. They cannot afford retirement. In New York City, homelessness over the past 2 years has increased in relentless fashion. In New York today, there are 57,448 people living in shelters. That's just the count in the shelters. That's not talking people in the streets. 57,000 plus. 40% of them are children. Wages have not kept pace with rents. Where are we headed as a nation? I hate to even use this word, but sometimes I think about when I see the disgrace of what's happening in the streets of our cities. I wonder how close are we to class warfare? I just wonder. But is socialism really a new idea on the American landscape? One of the most fascinating periods in American church history occurred between 1875 and the end of World War I. It was called the social gospel movement, where some of the more progressive theologians and ministers took the teachings of Jesus to heart. So they looked at what he was saying about poverty and what our responsibilities are, what our obligation is. And thus, they took a radical step in breaking with traditional American Protestantism, which had always served as an advocate of laissez-faire economics. Social gospel emerged following a huge shift in American demographics, which followed immediately after the Civil War. Before the Civil War, less than half the population worked for somebody else. These people were farmers, had small businesses. But in the years after the war, when industry developed, huge corporations like U.S. Steel, Standard Oil, brought on a mass migration to urban areas. Chicago, for example, between 1870 and 1890, went from a city of 300,000 to 1.1 million. The rapid growth of America's cities and its urban population was matched by a rise in squalor and poverty. One of America's first photojournalists, Jacob Riis, an immigrant from Denmark, actually made quite a name for himself by publishing photographs of the living conditions of the urban poor. Now, does it come as a surprise that the depiction of poverty through photos, and of course this was the time when there was a lot of muckraking going on, that whole enterprise just started. Is it a surprise that it had little impact on the general public? But the social gospel movement drove a social mission to the center of their preaching. They felt they had to. It was essential. We couldn't look away. Factory workers were suffering abuse at the hands of their employers. Children were working. And a whole new wave of poverty marginalized far too many people in society. But frankly, the churches then and now had little to do, really. They really weren't too concerned other than providing comfort. They would console, and of course they would prepare people for the next world. And so making money, making war could proceed without the inconvenient restraints of morality sanctioned by religion. mainline churches functioned, they existed then as well as now, by upholding the socioeconomic structures of business. Evangelical churches today preach about God wanting us to be rich. I'd like to go to that church. I really would. I'd take notes. The social gospel movement, however, attended to reassert over and over again the moral values of Christianity, to put that front and center into society, make society see it. But being critical of elites and addressing issues of class and power didn't really attract a huge following. Churches in general have little to gain by addressing inequality. The liberal church is certainly no exception. A good case could be made for the liberal church serving the ideological justification for modern capitalism by espousing that all people must be equally free to fulfill their capabilities. Liberals had no quarrel with capitalism and saw their social role as trying to ensure that all society had equal opportunities for material success. And as long as they would all have some access to the system, why then the liberal church was doing its job. And so the social gospel movement bypassed liberalism, giving a religious and a moral voice to the Christian demands of a just society. Washington Gladden from Springfield, Massachusetts, was the first notable minister of the social gospel movement. 1875, brand new to the church there. And he endeavored to begin a whole new era of American Christianity. What he did, which was so startling, especially to the members of his church who had no idea what they were getting when they told him, he went to the strikers of a local shoe factory in town. He offered them his support. And he said, I am in complete sympathy with you. Why don't you come to my church and feel the support? And they said, no, thanks, we're not going to go to your church. And he said, why not? I mean, I support you guys. Come on over. And they pointed out to him, and I guess rather carefully and gingerly, they pointed out to him that the owners of the factories, the managers of the factories, they were in his church. Wow, that's a revelation. Within a year, Gladden published a book, Working People and Their Employers. He supported the workers to form a union. It was the 1870s. Gladden became an advocate of the rights of African Americans, and he helped form the NAACP. The social gospel movement not only responded to the poverty spurred by a rapidly emerging industrialization, but it also took race relations very seriously. Now, the social gospel movement, under the leadership of its most famous minister, Walter Rauschenbusch, whose church was located right at the edge of Hell's Kitchen in New York, he established a social creed, an actual social creed, that called for measures to alleviate conditions created by this new industrial workplace. And in this social creed, and it was quite a list, included were alleviation of Sunday working hours, the elimination of child labor, and the creation of disability insurance for the workers injured in factories. In 1907, Rauschenbusch published Christianity and the Social Crisis, and by the next year, the National Council of Churches was founded. They were founded in large part to get all the Protestant churches to accept the social creed. That was the beginning of the National Council of Churches. But the social improvement of society, as the social gospelers preached, failed to really take root in any major or significant way. The move towards socialism and egalitarianism just didn't grab the imagination of the public. Rauschenbusch interpreted this as coming against, and I quote, the solid granite stone of human selfishness. The solid granite stone of human selfishness. That image could even apply today. The granite stone of human selfishness. One of the great church historians, Martin Marty, divided American Protestantism into two sectors, as the private religion sector and the public religion sector. Those who fell into a private religious view focused on saving their own individual souls. In revival meetings, preachers aimed to get people to turn away from their own sins and to embrace personal salvation. Now, the public religionists focused on the sins of society, such as poverty and inequality. They asked people to seek salvation through building the kingdom of God on this earth. But the seekers of personal salvation were always more popular and more plentiful than those who were willing to work towards the elimination of poverty and improving working conditions. Does that seem odd? Not really. There's a reason for that, and I want to cite one of my favorite passages, the whole Bible. This is in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, and it offers insight into human nature. What is it that really makes us tick? It offers this kind of insight that I think I've never come across before. It's a very simple, very, very quick couple of passages, one passage, a couple of sentences. It goes like this. As Jesus started on his way, a man ran up to him and fell on his knees before him. Good teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus is a little gruff at the beginning. He says, well, you know the commandments. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony. You shall not defraud. Honor your mother. Honor your father. Teacher, he declared, all these I have kept since I was a boy. Jesus looked at him and loved him. One thing you lack, he said. Go sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me. At this, the man's face fell, and he began to cry. He went away sad because he had great wealth. Isn't that startling? He couldn't do it. He walked away from the Son of God so he can keep his riches. Continue to play with. No, I can't follow that. What an insight into human nature. Not to transform the world into a more egalitarian society who took preference over, let me just guard my wealth. No wonder the Christian right acts so righteously. Their mindset is on their own personal salvation. Why worry about the ills of society? Christian indifference to social issues is in fact justified through personal salvation. Now, the whole social gospel movement was rendered impotent because it relied upon, as do so many of our idealists, it relied on faith in the improvement of human nature. That's what it hinges on. It's all going to work if we believe in the improvement of human nature. And the followers of the social gospel movement became completely disillusioned about this capacity for human good when our soldiers returned from the First World War and informed the public of the stark, harsh, brutal realities that took place in trench warfare. Faith in the human potential for good took a nosedive. And I wonder today, in this service, how many of us feel that there is a capacity for human goodness? How many of us believe in human nature coming through? I don't know. Is Bernie Sanders an idealist along with all the other socialist advocates for a just society? Does socialism depend on believing in the potential goodness of human nature? And is that even viable? Won't we become disillusioned along with all the other hopefuls in history who believed that we could make society more fair? Is Bernie an idealist like all those other socialists, Eugene Debs, Norman Thomas, Michael Harrington? Or is there something more concrete about socialism's appeal today, as the gap between rich and poor has hopelessly widened to the brink of despair? Bernie has moved a step beyond a tired and ineffective liberalism. He offers a different vision of what our society could be like. He hasn't completely given up on liberals, as he jokingly says, "Some of my best friends are liberals." But what does liberalism really offer this country today, aside from the same old appeals for equal opportunities in a flawed capitalist system? Socialism will probably not prevail in this election, in this time, but the sting of socialism, the sting of that word has been removed. The sting and horror and fright of that concept has been removed, making it possible to consider that someday human justice, earth justice, will hold a new and profound appeal, and the kingdom of God will finally have arrived in this world someday. Can we close our service turning our hymn books, please, to number 345? We struggle with a vision of the world made whole by loving justice. May we seek the strength to enter life more fully so that we can share and serve, bring light where there are shadows, liberation where there's despair. Such is our vision and our hope this day. Amen.
The candidate's a dodger, yes, a well-known dodger, yes, the candidate's a dodger, yes, and I'm a dodger too. He'll meet you and treat you and ask you for your vote, but look out, boys, he's a dodging for a note. Yes, we're all dodging, a dodging, dodging, dodging. Yes, we're all dodging out a way through the world. Yes, the preacher, he's a dodger, yes, a well-known dodger. Yes, the preacher, he's a dodger, yes, and I'm a dodger too. He'll preach you a gospel and tell you of your crimes. But look out, boys, he's a dodging for your dimes. Yes, we're all dodging, a dodging, dodging, dodging. Yes, we're all dodging out a way through the world. Yes, the lover, he's a dodger, yes, a well-known dodger, yes, the lover, he's a dodger, yes, and I'm a dodger too. He'll hug you and kiss you and call you his bride. But look out, girls, he's a-telling you a lie. Yes, we're all dodging, a dodging, dodging, dodging. Yes, we're all dodging out a way through